How frequently did medieval people have food fights? Were duels and sword fights common at a medieval feast or dinner? Was there such a thing as dinner manners in the Middle Ages? These and other questions will be answered right after this. I'm Professor Jerome Arkenberg, and I've been teaching a wide variety of history courses at colleges across this country for the past 30 years. In this video, I'm going to tell you about how and when medieval people ate. Medieval feast versus noon dinners. Medieval dining customs and manners, and entertainers at a medieval dinner. But first, make sure to click like, share, and especially subscribe, and that little bell thingy, so I can continue to bring you more great videos just like this one. Medieval people usually ate twice daily: a big dinner at noon and a light supper at night. Often just pottage or a sop of bread dipped in wine or beer, all due to the agrarian nature of heavy morning work needing an energy break, followed by heavy afternoon work with enough calories to take one through a night and morning of fasting. However, though frowned upon by the church, breaking the overnight fast for an early morning meal was common among the peasantry, artisans, and lower classes, who started work at the crack of dawn and found it hard to hold off until dinner at noontime. They also, of course, snacked throughout the day. And by the 15th century, the nobility too began the day with a breakfast of bread, meat, and ale, with an afternoon meal called a Drynkyng, with heavy consumption of beer or wine. Of course, remember, there is no such thing as tea time because in the Middle Ages, there is no such thing as tea, or coffee for that matter. How they got through the day, I have no idea. Medieval people also commonly, despite the ire of the church, which complained of the loud laughter, crudity, jokes, gambling, and flirting of a dinner, ate a late meal known as a Reresoper, consisting sometimes of a full meal, sometimes of just snacks, enjoyed by a few friends in a private room, which often dragged on until after midnight and the next day, giving you a hangover. And of course, this is your typical medieval feast, and of course, as the church saw it, people being tempted by music, played by devils and demons, all designed to get you to eat too much food and engage in lustful activities. Medieval feasts were predominantly male, as only the wives of the host and guest of honor and their ladies-in-waiting usually attended. However, after the appearance of fireplaces, yes, there are no fireplaces till about the 12th and 13th century, which could heat the upstairs bedrooms, at this point the women began to eat in private, away from the bad manners and crude jokes of the men eating in the Great Hall. Dinners for the nobility and upper classes consisted of two main courses, followed by a dessert course, though this might sometimes be just for special guests, which each course having a variety of dishes of meat, fish, or fowl, and 2 or more simpler ones, arranged in the kitchen in compatible groups and put on platters sent to the hall, with 2 to 6 diners called a mess, that's M-E-S-S-E, mess, sharing each serving. Except for the high table on the dais, where the food was handed around by the serving staff, and where the carver cut the meat in appropriate portions, the rest of the diners had to help themselves to the food, either eating it directly from the shared platter or putting it on their trenchers first, which is why boiled or roasted meat on the platters came already cut in bite-sized pieces. If carving was required at the table, and you see it here, this one and this one, the carver at work, carving knives were provided and used by the diners to carve their own food or that of their fellow diners. Though, of course, the Lord and his distinguished guest were cared for by a professional carver, whose job cutting the trencher was easy. But some animals, such as crabs, were a challenge and were often cold by the time the carver had finished his job. Since meat was usually accompanied by a sauce, there were 2 ways of serving meat. One with the sauce already poured over it, or 2, the sauce served separately in a bowl for 2 or more diners to share. Beverages, too, were often shared by diners, who drank from a common cup. And yes, if you keep on hearing me saying the word sharing, that is correct. You do not get your own goblet or your own platter, though you did get your own trencher. Everyone was to share. At any meal, whether noon dinner, supper, breakfast, the Reresoper, or the Drynkyng, courtesy, cleanliness, and moderation were expected, as manners were held to be an outer sign of inner worth. So, for example, in here, note the bad manners on display. You're not supposed to get up and do that. This is really a bad manner. And why is the musician here and not up in the gallery? And this is a very bad manner. The guy is simply throwing up on the floor. And oh my gosh, what are they doing? This is the height of bad manners. So, to set themselves off from peasants who regularly belched and farted at table, the nobility and upper classes began to closely control their bodily functions, and, based on customs picked up from both the Byzantine and Arab upper classes, as a result of the Crusades, medieval European upper classes tried to appear elegant and refined at all times, even when alone. Thus, given the lack of individual place settings, the arrangements of guests in messes of 2 to 6 people who shared from common platters and goblets, though, should mention, if you were to get up and go from one mess to another to get more food or different types of food, remember, more quality food was served the further up towards the dais you went. That was considered the height of bad manners. Anyway, the 2 messes of 2 to 6 people who shared from common platters and goblets, hygiene and cleanliness were a concern for all. Remember, they don't know anything about germs or bacteria, but they know about junk, spit, phlegm, and other stuff. So diners were to first see that their seat was clean, wash their hands before the meal. Now, there's no actual real soap. There are some herbs like soapwort, which can mimic soap. Of course, you can also get the really bad grime off with sand. But make sure to wash your hands before the meal and then not spit into the ewer, nor splash water on your neighbor, nor make the common towel, yes, a common towel, overly dirty. Since fingers were normally used to eat, and two or more diners would normally share their food, great emphasis was placed on clean hands. So they were to be washed before and after the meal, and often also in between courses, especially if your fingers had become greasy from handling the food. Finger licking good was not an ideal for any of the nobility or other upper-class diners. Thus, in wealthy households, the ewerer, and here's the ewerer right here. It's, of course, with a 14th century ewer. The ewerer, kind of hard to say, but the ewerer was in charge of the towels and the ewer, which is the basin of scented water for washing, with hands either dipped in the ewer to wash them, or the ewerer would carefully, to avoid splashing and staining a diner's garment, pour water over their hands. With bread, pieces were to be cut or broken off a shared loaf. Keep in mind, there's no such thing as sliced bread until the 1920s. So, pieces of the bread were to be cut or broken off a shared loaf, but never, ever by holding the loaf against one's chest, and never bitten off. Pieces never, ever double dipped in shared goblets of drink, or shared sauce or gravy bowls, nor should one take a bite, then set it back in the shared platter. Oh my goodness, that's like one of the worst things ever. When diners shared a cup, they were to wipe their mouth before drinking, then drink quietly, hold it from below when passing it, make sure the next person did not drink from the cup in the same spot, never dip your fingers in the wine or beer or ale, nor immerse your beard in the cup or drink with one's mouth full. Courtesy demanded that the amount of food taken from a shared dish was not overly large. In other words, don't be a pig. And that diners did not fish around the dish for a specific piece, take the best morsels for themselves, return half-eaten food to the platter, or refuse any food placed before them. Diners were not to blow on shared food or drink, offer or accept half-eaten food, spit crumbs from one's mouth or over the table, belch or fart at the table, blow one's nose in the napkin given, pick one's nose or teeth with fingers or hand, or pick one's teeth with your little knife that you bring with you, or slurp while eating or drinking. Diners were to sit decorously at the table without leaning or stretching back. And they were not to put elbows on the table, heads in their hands or feet on another, scratch their head, hunt for fleas on their body, eat on both sides of their mouth at once, nor talk with their mouth full. If this sounds familiar, it should. These manners that we have today appeared in the Middle Ages, with first the upper class and slowly made its way down to everyone else. One should also not quaff drinks in haste, nor drink to excess, nor sit until the Lord is sat, or rise until the Lord is gotten up, nor take dining cues from any but the Lord at table. And of course, as you see here, if you need to throw up, leave the great hall. Do not throw up or spit up while at the dinner table or even in the dining hall. Diners were not to stare, engage in loud talk or laughter, which was a sure sign of drunkenness and a prime medieval faux pas, or whisper, which could be mistaken for gossip or plotting, another awful etiquette mistake. Now you see, of course, here in this picture, this was a kind of medieval great recreation in the 1840s in Britain. And you can see here all the many things wrong. Remember, you have diners sitting on both sides of the table, which of course would never have been done. According to medieval etiquette, tables were to be kept tidy and clean. So a voider, essentially a garbage bag, was always nearby where food fragments like trencher crust could be thrown away. Do not, ever, if there are actually dogs or cats or other animals scurrying around the floor, give food to them from the table or either directly into their mouths or just toss it on the floor. Please, have some manners. Medieval dinners were quite noisy. Besides conversation, musicians played, minstrels sang, actors, jesters, tumblers, acrobats, jugglers, animal trainers, conjurers, mummers, and mimes could all perform, as seen here. At the end of the meal, tables were cleared, spoons and leftover food and voiders were collected, and if the spoons are of silver, usually counted to make sure none of the diners were walking off with them. And after the food and voiders were collected, fruit, cheese, hippocras, wafer cookies, and pastries were brought out to enjoy, after which tables were cleared again, this time including goblets, trenchers, napkins, and the salt cellar. Due to the difficulty of preserving food, there's no refrigerators, leftovers were collected in an alms dish and handed to the almoner, who then distributed it as alms, charity, freely to the poor. Thank you, my lord, for this gravy-encrusted trencher. With all the food and dinnerware removed from the tables, Ewers brought round their ewers and basins for hand washing. Grace was said, and the Lord got to his feet as a sign that dinner had ended. Afterwards, the Lord and any distinguished guest might, not always, but might move to another room to enjoy more sugar-coated spices or comfits and other treats, including copious amounts of beer or wine. So, let me know what you liked about this video and what other historical topics or subjects you'd like to see in future videos. Be sure to click like, share, and subscribe, as it will help me bring you more great videos. And click on that little bell thingy so you'll know when the next History Waits for No One video is posted. If you want to know more, there are recommended studies on this topic in the description below, along with other ways to connect with me. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the past.